This presentation contains themes of psychological suspense and intense situations. Listener discretion is advised. The morning sun always hit the manicured lawns of Oakhaven just right, painting everything in a golden, impossible glow. It was the kind of pristine perfection that lured you in, promising a life free of worry, free of chaos, a haven from the unpredictable world outside its wrought iron gates. But beneath that polished veneer, something festered. Something I learned the hard way when David disappeared. When Michael and I first toured Oakhaven, it felt like stepping into a postcard. Every house was immaculately maintained, every shrub perfectly sculpted, every street impossibly clean. The air itself seemed to hum with a quiet, almost reverent order. We'd been living in a chaotic city suburb, constantly battling traffic, noise, and the creeping anxiety of rising crime rates. Oakhaven, with its round-the-clock security, its private parks, and its self-contained community, felt like the answer to every prayer we hadn't even known how to articulate. A fresh start, a safer place for our future, for our peace of mind. The sales agent, a woman named Jessica with an unervingly bright smile, had walked us through the community center, the Olympic-sized pool, the tennis courts, and the charming little cafe. "Here, safety isn't just a promise, it's a guarantee," she chirped, her voice echoing slightly in the spotless hallways. "Our rules are designed to maintain harmony, property values, and the unparalleled quality of life our residents deserve." She handed us a glossy brochure that listed a few common-sense regulations: quiet hours, landscaping standards, waste disposal guidelines. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary for a high-end gated community. We signed the papers, packed our lives into boxes, and moved into our dream home on Maple Drive. For the first few months, Oakhaven was everything we'd hoped for. Even more. The neighbors, like Sarah and Tom from across the street, were incredibly welcoming, organizing potlucks and block parties. Children rode bikes freely down the wide, tree-lined streets without a parent in sight, a sight that had become unthinkable in our old neighborhood. Every morning, I'd wake up to the chirping of birds and the distant rhythmic whir of a lawnmower. Always a different one, always perfectly timed. There was a sense of unspoken agreement, a collective dedication to upholding the community's flawless image. But then tiny cracks began to appear in the facade. Things so small, so subtle that at first, I dismissed them as my own city-bred paranoia. The landscaping rules, for instance, were less guidelines and more sacred tenets. One afternoon I saw a new resident, a young man named Alex, trying to paint his front door a vibrant teal. Within hours, a stern-faced representative from the Homeowners Association, Mr. Henderson, was at his doorstep. By the next morning, the door was repainted a subdued, HO-approved shade of gray. Alex never spoke of it, but a subtle shift had occurred in his demeanor. He became quieter, more compliant. Then there was the trash bin incident. Michael, forgetting the precise collection schedule, left our bins out an hour too early one evening. The next morning, a note was taped to our door, not just a friendly reminder, but a formal warning complete with a fine. It wasn't the fine that bothered me, it was the speed and precision of it all. It felt less like a community oversight and more like a surveillance operation. Who was watching? All the time. Our next-door neighbor, David Miller, was the first one to vocalize the growing unease I felt. David was a genial, intelligent man in his late 50s, a retired college professor with a penchant for classic rock and a slightly unkempt garden, which, to my surprise, was tolerated. He'd lived in Oakhaven for 15 years, one of the original residents. He had a dry wit and a keen eye for detail. We'd often chat over the fence while he trimmed his slightly too tall roses. "You notice how nobody ever complains about anything here, Emily?" He'd asked me one sunny Tuesday, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not even the ridiculous HOA fees. It's like everyone's afraid to rock the boat, even a little bit." I'd laughed it off then, saying, "Maybe there's just nothing to complain about, David. It's pretty perfect." He'd just given me a knowing look. Perfect is a dangerous word, kiddo, especially when it's enforced. Over the next few weeks, David started pushing back ever so slightly. He began by leaving his lawn gnome, a rather cheerful, brightly painted fellow named Reginald, prominently displayed in his front yard, despite the HOA's explicit rule against non-natural lawn ornaments. When a warning letter arrived, he simply moved Reginald to a different spot. Then he started attending HOA meetings, asking pointed questions about budget allocations, the rationale behind certain rules, and the lack of transparency in decision-making. He questioned why the community's internet was provided by a single, expensive, and notoriously slow provider, when faster, cheaper options were available just outside the gates. He even started a small online petition among residents for a choice of providers. Michael thought David was being foolish, risking his peace of mind over trivial matters. "It's not worth it, Emily," he'd said, shaking his head. "This place is great. Why stir up trouble?" But I admired David's spirit. He wasn't malicious, just genuinely curious and a little bit rebellious. He believed in fairness and open dialogue, principles that seemed increasingly alien within Oakhaven's meticulously curated borders. He was the one person who seemed willing to scratch beneath the surface. Then came the day David announced his biggest protest. He was going to start a local blog, an independent news source for Oakhaven residents, to discuss community issues, share opinions, and hold the HOA accountable. "Information is power, Emily," he told me, eyes sparkling with excitement. "And these folks? They like to keep a tight lid on information." He'd even asked if I'd like to contribute, given my background in journalism. I hesitated, feeling a cold dread creep up my spine, but told him I'd think about it. That was a Wednesday. I remember it vividly. The air was crisp, and the scent of jasmine hung heavy. David was buzzing with energy, full of plans for his blog, already drafting his first post about the internet provider issue. He was going to call it Oakhaven Unfiltered. By Friday morning, David Miller was gone. His car was still in the driveway. His beloved Reginald gnome was still standing guard by his rose bushes. The front door was unlocked, but David himself had vanished without a trace. No note, no message, no sign of struggle. Just an unsettling, profound emptiness where a vibrant, questioning man had been just hours before. The initial reaction from the community was a flurry of hushed whispers and concerned phone calls. The local police were called, but their investigation seemed perfunctory, almost reluctant. They found nothing. No forced entry, no suspicious activity on the security cameras, which coincidentally had a glitch in the footage covering the exact time David was believed to have disappeared. Within days, the whispers died down. Sarah and Tom across the street offered vague theories about David having an elderly relative he might have rushed off to care for, or perhaps he'd finally decided to take that round-the-world cruise he'd always talked about. Explanations that felt too neat, too rehearsed. No one seemed genuinely surprised, and that was the most terrifying part. It was as if a collective, unspoken understanding had settled over the community. David had pushed too hard. He had broken an unwritten, yet undeniably potent rule, and the consequences were absolute. I looked at Michael, his face pale with unspoken fear, and then out at the perfectly manicured lawns, the unblemished houses, the impossibly clear sky. The golden glow of Oakhaven suddenly felt suffocating, its perfection a thinly veiled threat. The rules I now understood were not suggestions. They were commandments, and David had dared to question them. Now, I wondered what would happen to us if we dared to even think about questioning them too. We were trapped in a paradise that had just revealed its teeth. The collective gasp that had rippled through the gathered crowd had been quickly swallowed by the pristine, silent air of evergreen estates. No one dared to speak. No one dared to meet our eyes. Eleanor Vance, her posture as rigid and unyielding as the sculpted hedges lining the perfectly paved streets, watched David's retreating form until he vanished around the bend. Then, with a slow, deliberate turn, her gaze swept over us, lingering for a fraction of a second on each face, a silent, chilling reminder. It was a look that promised no mercy, only the cold, hard enforcement of her will. The meeting was officially dismissed, though no one had uttered the words. One by one, the impeccably dressed residents turned and walked away, their steps hushed, their faces carefully blank. No one spoke of what they had just witnessed. No one exchanged a glance of shared horror or confusion. It was as if David and the entire incident had never existed. They simply melted back into their perfect lives, leaving Sarah and me standing there, paralyzed. The image of David being led away burned into our minds. What just happened?" Sarah finally whispered, her voice barely audible, her hand clutching my arm. Her grip was tight enough to bruise, a desperate anchor in a world that had suddenly tilted on its axis. I couldn't answer. My throat felt thick, clogged with a mixture of fear and disbelief. The sun still shone, birds still chirped their cheerful melodies from the meticulously pruned trees, and the air still smelled faintly of blooming jasmine. But the beauty moments ago so inviting, now felt like a suffocating shroud. Our dream home, our promised paradise, had transformed into a gilded cage before our very eyes. We walked home in a daze, the short distance feeling like a mile. Every perfectly aligned mailbox, every pristine lawn, every symmetrical window seemed to watch us, judging. The silence of the community, once a soothing balm, now felt heavy, oppressive, as if the very air held its breath, listening. We didn't speak until we were safely inside our own four walls, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind us with a definitive thud that seemed to echo the finality of our entrapment. "They just took him," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she leaned against the door, her eyes wide with terror. "For asking a question. For daring to disagree." I paced the living room, the plush carpet feeling suddenly alien beneath my feet. "It was more than just a question, Sarah. It was a challenge. He challenged them. He challenged Eleanor." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He challenged the very foundation of this place. We spent the rest of the afternoon in a state of suspended animation. We tried to make sense of it, to rationalize it, to find an explanation that didn't involve a sinister, authoritarian regime masquerading as a homeowners association. Maybe David had a history of being disruptive. Maybe the rules were more serious than we thought. But the swiftness, the silence, the absolute lack of due process, it all pointed to something far more chilling. "We have to find out what happened to him," Sarah insisted, pulling out her phone. "Maybe he's just in a holding cell or something. They can't just disappear people." She tried calling David's number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. We walked to his house, a mirror image of ours 2 doors down, but with a different landscaping scheme. The blinds were drawn. His car, a sensible sedan we'd seen him driving, was gone from the driveway. There was no sign of life, no indication that anyone had ever lived there at all. It was as if David, and his entire existence, had been neatly erased. As we stood there, an unsettling prickle ran down my spine. I glanced across the street, at the house belonging to the Millers, a couple we'd briefly met who seemed almost unnervingly cheerful. A curtain twitched in their front window. A shadow moved. I quickly pulled Sarah away, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Let's go," I muttered, pulling her arm. "We shouldn't be here." Back home, the paranoia began to set in. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every creak of the house a warning. We found ourselves whispering, even when we were alone. We checked the windows, the locks. We half expected Eleanor Vance to appear on our doorstep, her stern face a harbinger of doom. Instead, the next morning brought Brenda, a woman from down the street, with a piping hot casserole dish in her hands and a smile stretched wide across her face. Brenda was in her late 60s, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She'd been introduced as a community ambassador during the orientation, a title that now sounded far more ominous than welcoming. "Good morning, neighbors," she chirped, her voice bright and overly cheerful, as if she hadn't a care in the world. "Just wanted to officially welcome you to Evergreen Estates. I know the orientation can be a lot to take in, but trust me, it's all for the best. We're a very close-knit community here." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her gaze sweeping over our living room, assessing, judging. Her eyes, though smiling, were strangely cold. "Oh, this is lovely," she said, her voice saccharine sweet. "You've really made it your own. Just remember, of course, that all exterior modifications require HOA approval. We like to maintain a consistent aesthetic here." I managed a weak smile. "Of course. We understand." Brenda set the casserole down on the kitchen counter, the aroma of baked chicken and vegetables filling the air. "Now, I know you're probably still settling in," she continued, turning back to us, her smile unwavering, "and it can be a bit overwhelming. But I promise you, once you get the hang of things, you'll see why our rules are so important. They're not just arbitrary, you know. They're the very fabric of our security, our peace, our perfect way of life." She paused, her gaze fixing on me, then Sarah. "Some people, of course, struggle with that. They come from different environments. They think they can simply impose their own ideas, their own disruptions. But Evergreen Estates thrives on harmony, on compliance. And we are very, very good at maintaining that harmony." The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air between us, thicker than the scent of the casserole. She hadn't mentioned David by name, but the implication was clear, chillingly so. He was a disruption, and disruptions were dealt with permanently. It's for everyone's benefit, really. Brenda continued, oblivious to our growing discomfort or perhaps enjoying it. Think of it as a finely tuned machine. Every cog must turn in sync. One loose cog, one bit of friction, and the whole system starts to falter. We simply can't have that. Not when we've worked so hard to build something so perfect. She picked up a small, glossy brochure from our coffee table. A welcome packet we'd received, filled with information about local amenities and, ironically, the community's values. Her finger traced the words on the cover. Evergreen Estates. Your sanctuary, your serenity. And speaking of serenity, she added, her voice dropping slightly, becoming almost conspiratorial, I noticed you were out late last night after the meeting. Just a friendly reminder, our community gates close promptly at 10 p.m. And while we understand emergencies happen, we do encourage residents to be inside their homes by then. It's for your safety, of course. We have excellent security, but a vigilant community is the best defense. My blood ran cold. She had seen us. Someone had seen us. The miller's twitching curtain. Brenda's visit wasn't just a welcome, it was a warning. A demonstration of how closely they were watching. We hadn't been out late, just walking back from David's house. But the implication was that any deviation from the norm, any movement outside the expected, was noted. Thank you, Brenda, Sarah managed, her voice strained. We appreciate the guidance. Brenda's smile widened, revealing perfectly white teeth. Anytime, dears. That's what neighbors are for. Just a friendly reminder to always review the community guidelines. They're updated regularly, you know. And remember, the rules of Evergreen Estates are not suggestions. They are the bedrock of our shared prosperity. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. Oh, and one more thing. We have a community-wide internet service, which is fantastic for security and speed. Just make sure you're using the approved network. Personal hotspots or external networks can interfere with our system's integrity. And with that, she was gone, leaving behind the lingering scent of casserole and a suffocating wave of dread. Sarah and I stared at each other, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air between us. What had we gotten ourselves into? The internet restriction, the late-night observation, David's disappearance. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just a community with strict rules. This was a place designed for absolute control. We can't stay here, Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. We have to leave. But the thought was immediately met with a wave of paralyzing fear. Leave? How? Our savings were tied up in this house. This perfect, pristine, horrifying house. And what would happen if we tried? If we became disruptions ourselves? The rules I now understood were not just for living here. They were also, terrifyingly, for staying here. And I had a chilling premonition that they were also for leaving here. We were trapped. And the walls of our sanctuary were closing in, revealing themselves to be the bars of our very own gilded prison. My initial excitement for our new life, for the pristine lawns and the tranquil nights, curdled into a cold dread. The air, once so fresh and inviting, now felt heavy, saturated with unspoken tension. Every perfectly manicured bush, every strategically placed lamppost, every silent, watchful security camera, now seemed less like an amenity and more like an instrument of control. Mark, my husband, still tried to brush off my growing unease. Sarah, it's just a new environment, he'd say, his voice lacking conviction even to his own ears. We're not used to such order. But the order here wasn't the kind that brought peace. It was the kind that demanded absolute conformity, enforced by an invisible, omnipresent hand. The whispers started subtly, like rustling leaves in a breeze that wasn't quite there. Isolated incidents that, taken alone, could be dismissed as coincidence, but when pieced together, formed a mosaic of chilling intent. Old Mr. Henderson, who had lived here for 20 years, loved to garden. His rose bushes were legendary, spilling over the meticulously defined boundaries of his property, a riot of color in an otherwise impeccably uniform landscape. One morning, his prize-winning hybrid tea roses, the ones he'd nurtured for decades, were gone. Not trimmed, not pruned, but cleanly severed at the base, as if by a surgical blade. No trace of the perpetrator, no security footage showing anything amiss. Mr. Henderson, a man known for his booming laugh, became a shadow. He replaced the roses with a neat row of identical, HO-approved boxwoods, and his gardening passion seemed to vanish overnight, replaced by a quiet, almost fearful compliance. Then there were the Wilsons, David and Emily. They had moved in just a few months before us, a vibrant, optimistic couple with two energetic young kids, Lily and Ben. Emily, particularly, was a force of nature. A bubbly, outspoken woman who loved to host impromptu backyard barbecues and whose laughter often echoed through the cul-de-sac. Their house, for all its pristine exterior, had a slightly more lived-in, personalized feel than others. A bright blue swing set in the backyard, a whimsical gnome peeking out from their flower bed, a live laugh love sign hanging slightly askew on their porch. Small rebellions, perhaps, against the subtle uniformity. I noticed Emily looking increasingly stressed during our weekly coffee meetups at the community clubhouse. Her usual vibrant energy was dimming. One Tuesday she confided in me, her voice barely a whisper, that they were thinking of moving. "It's just not quite what we expected, you know?" she said, her eyes darting around the elegant, empty room as if afraid of being overheard. "The kids miss their old school friends, David's commute is worse than we thought, and honestly it's just a little too quiet here." My heart sank. I knew exactly what she meant. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. I wanted to tell her my fears, to warn her, but the words caught in my throat. I just nodded, trying to appear sympathetic and normal. "Moving is a big decision," I managed. A week later, a discreet "for sale by owner" sign appeared on the Wilsons' property, tucked almost apologetically behind a large oak tree, barely visible from the street. It was a clear violation of the community's unwritten rules, a bold declaration of intent to escape. The official HOA bylaws were vague about for sale signs, stating only that all exterior modifications and signage must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. But everyone knew what that meant. No signs. Ever. The sign didn't last. By morning it was gone. Emily was furious, convinced it was just kids. But then it happened again. And again. Each time, a new sign more discreet than the last would appear, only to vanish within hours. It was like a silent, escalating battle. Then the more insidious things started. Their internet connection became sporadic, cutting out for days at a time, making it impossible for David, who worked remotely, to do his job. Their phone lines would mysteriously go dead. Their perfectly arranged recycling bins would be found overturned, contents strewn across their driveway, on nights when no other bins in the neighborhood were touched. These weren't grand acts of vandalism. They were petty, persistent annoyances designed to wear them down, to make their lives incrementally more difficult. One evening, I saw Emily frantically searching her front yard, her face etched with panic. "Our dog Buster," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "He's gone. He never leaves the yard." The entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Buster was a gentle golden retriever, beloved by the kids. We all joined the search, calling his name, walking the perfectly paved streets. Nothing. The silence of the community felt suffocating, heavier than usual. 3 days later, Buster reappeared. He was found whimpering on their porch, caked in mud, visibly thinner and terrified. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't play, and he flinched at every sudden movement. His once bright eyes were dull, haunted. It was as if something had broken him. The vets couldn't find any physical injuries, just extreme stress. Emily held him, sobbing, whispering apologies. The psychological warfare intensified. One morning, the Wilsons woke to find their lawn perfectly mowed, but every single one of Emily's prize-winning hydrangeas, which she'd carefully cultivated, had been ruthlessly chopped to stumps. Another time, someone had meticulously unscrewed every light bulb from their exterior fixtures and placed them in a neat pile on their doorstep. The message was clear. Asterisk, we see you. We know what you value, and we can take it away. Asterisk. Mark, who had initially dismissed my worries as overthinking, was now visibly unnerved. He saw the transformation in David and Emily. Their vibrant energy had been drained, replaced by a hollowed-out resignation. Emily stopped laughing. David's shoulders sagged, and his once optimistic demeanor was replaced by a constant, nervous glance over his shoulder. They stopped hosting. They stopped talking to people. Their children, Lily and Ben, once so boisterous, became quiet, withdrawn, their eyes reflecting the fear they saw in their parents. One rainy afternoon, I watched from my kitchen window as David and Emily, looking gaunt and defeated, slowly took down the "for sale by owner" sign for the last time. They didn't replace it. They didn't try to list their house online again. They simply stopped. The Wilsons, once so full of life and defiance, had been broken. They became perfectly compliant residents, their house immaculate, their lawn pristine, their presence a silent, chilling testament to the power of the unseen hand. Their backyard swing set, once a beacon of joy, was taken down. The whimsical gnome vanished. The live laugh love sign was replaced by a generic, HOA-approved brass plaque. The message wasn't just for the Wilsons. It was for all of us. It was a stark, brutal lesson delivered without a single word, without a single arrest, without a single visible authority figure. The rules weren't suggestions. They were commandments enforced by a pervasive chilling system that could dismantle your life, piece by agonizing piece, until you fit the mold. And if you didn't, if you dared to defy, if you dared to leave, the consequences were not just financial or social. They were existential. They broke your spirit, stole your joy, and left you an empty shell in a perfectly manicured cage. I looked at Mark, his face pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror that mirrored my own. We had come here seeking sanctuary, a safe haven for our children. Instead, we had stumbled into a meticulously crafted trap. The Wilsons' shattered dreams were a stark warning, a chilling prophecy of our own potential future. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They had been demonstrating the rules, not just enforcing them. They were showing us what happened when you tried to leave. And now the true terror began. We were not just living with the rules, we were living under them. And the consequences for breaking them, or even thinking about breaking them, were far more terrifying than any physical punishment. They were designed to erase you not from existence but from your very soul. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that our turn was coming. The invisible eyes were watching, waiting. And I could feel their gaze, cold and unblinking, already fixed upon us. The gilded cage had closed, and we were inside. The gilded cage had closed, and we were inside. After the Grahams' abrupt departure, the air in Oakhaven Lakes felt different. Thicker, somehow, with an unspoken tension that clung to the perfectly manicured hedges and the glass-smooth surface of the lake. Michael, ever the pragmatist, tried to rationalize it. They probably got a job transfer, Jess. It happens. But his words, meant to soothe, only scraped against the raw edge of my growing unease. He'd seen the untouched coffee cups, the half-finished projects, the sudden silent void where a vibrant family had been. He just chose to interpret it differently. For me, the certainty was absolute. We were being watched. It wasn't a sudden dramatic revelation, but a creeping, insidious realization that seeped into my bones. Every morning as I sipped my coffee on our back patio, the silence felt less peaceful and more expectant. The perfectly aligned rows of houses across the cul-de-sac seemed to hum with a quiet vigilance. I started noticing things. The way Mrs. Albright, 2 doors down, always seemed to be watering her prize-winning roses whenever I stepped outside, her gaze lingering a fraction too long on our property. The gentle nod from Mr. Henderson as he drove by in his pristine sedan, a nod that felt less like a greeting and more like an acknowledgement of my presence, my status within their observation. Even the children, playing in the perfectly maintained park, seemed to adhere to an unspoken code. Their laughter was never too boisterous. Their games never strayed beyond the designated areas. It was a picture of idyllic childhood, yet it felt curated, like a scene from a meticulously directed play. I found myself instinctively lowering my voice when talking to Michael, even when we were alone inside our own home. The feeling of being perpetually observed had begun to warp my perception of privacy. It started subtly with the landscaping. We had, in our blissful ignorance, planted a small cluster of vibrant, sprawling hydrangeas near our front porch. We loved their rich blues and purples, a splash of rebellious color against the uniform green of Oakhaven Lakes. Michael had spent an entire Saturday afternoon digging and planting, envisioning them growing into a magnificent, welcoming display. We thought they added character. We were wrong. A week after the hydrangeas had settled into their new home, a crisp, ivory envelope appeared in our mailbox. It wasn't a bill or junk mail. It was from the Oakhaven Lakes Homeowners Association. Inside, a single sheet of heavy parchment paper, embossed with the community's elegant crest. The letter itself was polite, almost excessively so. It began with a warm welcome to the community, reiterated the commitment to maintaining Oakhaven Lake's pristine aesthetic, and then, without preamble, moved to the point. It has come to our attention, the letter read in a flowing script, that the plant selections for the front-facing floor at 1422 Willow Creek Lane deviate from the approved native species and color palette outlined in Section 3.7b of the Oakhaven Lakes Community Standards Guide. While we appreciate your efforts to enhance your property, we kindly request that these plants be replaced with approved alternatives within 7 business days to ensure harmony with the community's established botanical vision. Michael chuckled when he read it. Botanical vision? Are you serious, Jess? It's a couple of hydrangeas. This is absurd icho nonsense. He crumpled the letter slightly, but I snatched it from him, smoothing out the crease. It wasn't absurd. It was a direct order, and the specificity was what truly unnerved me. Not just your plants, but the plant selections for the front-facing floor at 1422 Willow Creek Lane. They knew exactly what we had planted, where and when. Michael, I said, my voice barely a whisper. They're watching us. They know. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Okay, fine, it's a little much, but all HOAs are like this. We'll just swap them out. No big deal. He still didn't get it. It wasn't the hydrangeas. It was the principle. It was the quiet, unblinking authority. The next day, as if on cue, Mrs. Albright paid us a visit. She arrived with a small, perfectly wrapped gift basket, ostensibly a belated welcome. Her smile was wide, her eyes a startlingly clear blue. Jessica, dear. And Michael. Welcome again to Oakhaven Lakes. I just felt dreadful that I hadn't properly introduced myself. I'm Eleanor Albright, your neighbor just 2 doors down. Her voice was like warm honey, but there was an undertone of steel I couldn't quite place. She complimented our home, our choice of paint, the neatness of our lawn. Then she paused, her gaze drifting towards the offending hydrangeas. Such lovely colors, she cooed, her smile unwavering. Though in Oakhaven Lakes we do tend to favor the more subdued hues. It helps maintain the overall serenity, you see. Keeps everything feeling cohesive. We wouldn't want anything to disrupt the harmony. Her words were delivered with such practiced pleasantness, such an air of helpful neighborliness, that if I hadn't received the letter, I might have dismissed it as innocent chatter. But coupled with the HOA's missive, it felt like a direct, personal reinforcement of the rule. A gentle yet firm handslap. She wasn't just observing, she was enforcing. Oh yes, she continued, as if reading my thoughts. The community standards are quite comprehensive. They're designed to protect everyone's investment, of course, to ensure Oakhaven Lakes remains the pristine haven we all cherish. And the HOA takes them very seriously. They have to, you know, for the good of the community. Her blue eyes, which had seemed so benign, now held a glint of something sharper, something unyielding. Sometimes new residents they forget, or they think a little deviation won't hurt. But a small crack can quickly become a chasm, can't it? And we simply can't have that in Oakhaven Lakes. She took a delicate sip of the iced tea I'd offered, her gaze sweeping over our living room, assessing, evaluating. I felt exposed, every choice we'd made since moving in suddenly under scrutiny. The slightly mismatched throw pillows, the stack of magazines on the coffee table, the small framed photo of our rambunctious nephew. Were these two unharmonious? After she left, with another saccharine smile and a reminder to have a wonderful day, and do get those lovely new plants in soon, I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Michael was still trying to brush it off. She's just a busybody, Jess. Every neighborhood has one. But his usual confident dismissiveness was laced with a hint of something new. A flicker of doubt, a shadow of concern. He'd seen her eyes too. He'd heard the unspoken threat in her honeyed words. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, sounded amplified, sinister. I got up and peered through the blinds into the moonlit street. The houses across the way were dark, silent, perfect. But then I saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible red glow from what looked like a small camera lens, barely visible amidst the foliage of the perfectly trimmed bushes in Mrs. Albright's yard, pointed directly at our house. It wasn't just a motion sensor light. It was a surveillance camera. And I knew with a chilling certainty that it hadn't been there when we first moved in. The rules of Oakhaven Lakes were not suggestions. They were commandments. And the enforcers were everywhere, disguised as friendly neighbors, masked by polite letters, and hidden within the very fabric of this beautiful, terrifying community. The gilded cage was closing tighter, and I could feel the bars pressing in, not just on our property but on our very lives. The gilded cage was closing tighter, and I could feel the bars pressing in, not just on our property but on our very lives. The polite letters had become a relentless, suffocating tide, each one eroding a little more of our peace, a little more of our freedom. I tried to be proactive, to anticipate their next move. I spent an entire Saturday meticulously trimming every hedge to the exact specified height, even using a tape measure. I repainted the fence, not just the damaged section, but the entire perimeter, ensuring it was the exact shade of evergreen forest listed in the community guidelines. Emily watched me, her usual vibrant energy dulled by a low hum of anxiety. For a brief, naive moment, I thought we had bought ourselves some respite, that perhaps by showing absolute compliance, we could appease the unseen architects of this oppressive order. But the reprieve never came. Instead, a new, crisply printed envelope arrived just 3 days later, tucked neatly into our mailbox. It wasn't about the fence or the hedges this time. It was about our welcome mat. Dear resident Michael Davis, the letter began in the same impersonal, almost clinical tone. It has come to our attention that the welcome mat at your primary entrance, bearing the inscription Home Sweet Home, is in violation of Section 4.7 subsection B of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association bylaws, which states, all exterior decorative elements, including but not limited to welcome mats, must adhere to a neutral color palette and be devoid of any textual or overtly pictorial designs. We kindly request that this item be removed within 72 hours to avoid a non-compliance fine of $250. I stared at the offending mat, a simple beige coir mat with a friendly, innocuous message. It felt like a joke, a bizarre prank. Emily, however, didn't laugh. She just sighed, her shoulders slumping. Michael, just get rid of it. It's not worth it. But it was worth it. It was about the principle, about the slow, insidious erosion of our individuality. First the fence, then the hedges, now a welcome mat? What was next? The color of our front door? The type of flowers in our window boxes? I felt a surge of rage, hot and irrational but deeply felt. No, I said, my voice tight. I'm not just going to roll over for this. It's ridiculous. My defiance was short-lived. The next morning, a bright orange sticker was plastered to our front door, proclaiming in bold letters, "Violation notice, immediate action required." Below it, a new letter, identical in content to the previous one, but now with an added line. Failure to comply will result in an escalated fine and potential legal action. Emily, her eyes wide with fear, tore the mat from the doorstep and threw it into the garage. The victory, if you could call it that, felt hollow and bitter. The incidents escalated, each one more absurd than the last, each one chipping away at our sense of security. A notice arrived about the improper shade of white on our trim, even though it was the exact same paint used by every house on the street. Then, a stern warning about the excessive height of our rose bushes, which were precisely within the height range for their species. It was as if they were inventing violations just to keep us on edge, to remind us who held the real power. The most unnerving development, however, was the grass. I had always taken pride in my lawn, keeping it neatly mowed. One Tuesday, I received a notice stating our lawn was 0.75 inches above the permissible maximum of 3.0 inches in the northwest quadrant of our property. I had mowed it Sunday. I immediately went outside, tape measure in hand, to the exact spot indicated. Sure enough, a small patch, no bigger than my hand, was indeed a fraction longer than the rest. It was meticulous, chillingly precise. It meant they weren't just driving by, they were measuring. They were scrutinizing every blade of grass, every leaf, every minute detail of our lives. The feeling of being watched became a constant companion. Every car that drove slowly past our house, every rustle in the bushes, every shadow seemed to hold a hidden observer. I found myself scanning the rooftops for drones, peering through the blinds at night. Sleep became elusive, haunted by the imagined click of a camera lens or the silent whir of a surveillance device. Emily grew increasingly withdrawn, her laughter replaced by nervous whispers about moving. Our daughter Lily, usually so carefree, started asking why we couldn't put up the small, colorful bird feeder she'd made at school. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth, that even a simple act of childhood joy could be deemed a violation. I decided I couldn't live like this. I needed answers. I scoured the HOA website, trying to find a comprehensive list of bylaws, but the online portal was a labyrinth of broken links and outdated documents. I finally found a contact email for the HOA board president, a name I recognized from the welcome packet, Mr. Arthur Finch. I drafted a polite but firm email, requesting clarification on the new rules and expressing my concerns about the constant, seemingly arbitrary violations. The automated reply informed me Mr. Finch was unavailable for direct correspondence and directed me to a generic FAQ page. My frustration boiled over. I learned there was a quarterly HOA meeting scheduled for that Thursday evening at the community clubhouse. I told Emily I was going. She pleaded with me not to, her voice laced with fear. "Michael, don't stir things up. They'll just make it worse." But I felt a desperate need to face them, to put a human face to the faceless bureaucracy that was slowly suffocating us. The clubhouse was sterile, brightly lit, and sparsely attended. About a dozen residents sat stiffly in plastic chairs, arranged in a semicircle facing a long table where 3 individuals sat: a stern-faced woman in a tailored suit, a portly man with a perpetually disapproving frown, and to my surprise, Mr. Finch himself, a thin, impeccably dressed man with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He looked exactly as I imagined the architect of such an oppressive system would look. The meeting began with a droning recitation of community finances, followed by a series of minor approvals. When the floor was open for resident concerns, a tense silence fell. No one spoke. The woman in the suit, whom I later learned was Miss Eleanor Vance, the community manager, finally prompted, "Any concerns, residents?" I raised my hand. Mr. Finch's eyes flickered to me, a hint of something unreadable in their depths. "Yes, Mr. Davis," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. I stood, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "Yes, I have concerns regarding the recent increase in violation notices, particularly the seemingly arbitrary nature of some of the rules, such as the height of grass or the design of welcome mats. It feels excessive and frankly intrusive." A ripple of discomfort went through the few other residents. Ms. Vance cleared her throat. "Mr. Davis, all rules are established by the board for the betterment and aesthetic uniformity of Willow Creek Estates. They are clearly outlined in the bylaws, available upon request. But some of these rules seem to be newly enforced or interpreted with extreme precision," I pressed. "For example, the 0.75-inch difference in my lawn. How is that even measured?" Mr. Finch leaned forward slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Mr. Davis, our community employs state-of-the-art monitoring systems to ensure consistent adherence to all aesthetic guidelines. This includes aerial imaging and advanced sensor technology. We believe in proactive maintenance to uphold property values and the high standards of Willow Creek Estates." Aerial imaging? Advanced sensor technology? My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a security camera. It was a full-blown surveillance operation. I looked around the room. The other residents avoided my gaze, some staring at their laps, others at the ceiling. No one offered support. No one even looked surprised by Finch's admission. It was as if they already knew and had simply accepted it. And what about the lack of clarity on new rules? I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. "The online bylaws are incomplete. All residents receive updates via mail," Ms. Vance interjected, her tone firm. "It is your responsibility to review them." I felt a profound sense of futility. It was like arguing with a wall. They had an answer for everything, a bureaucratic shield against any challenge. As I sat down defeated, a new letter was being passed around by a young assistant. It was another notice, this one a community-wide bulletin. As it reached me, my eyes scanned the bold title, "Mandatory Property Inspections." My heart hammered against my ribs. The letter stated, "To ensure full compliance with newly updated structural and aesthetic guidelines, all properties within Willow Creek Estates will be subject to a mandatory interior and exterior inspection by an authorized HOA representative. Residents will be notified of their scheduled inspection date and time via mail. Failure to grant access will result in immediate fines and potential legal action to enforce compliance." My hands trembled as I read it again. They weren't just watching from outside anymore. They were coming in. They were demanding access to our homes. The gilded cage had not just closed. It was being meticulously examined for any imperfection, any sign of defiance. The bars were pressing in, not just on our property, but on the very sanctuary of our home, on our privacy, on our very lives. I looked up at Mr. Finch, who met my gaze with an unsettling, almost triumphant glint in his sharp eyes. We were truly trapped. Mr. Finch's eyes were like chips of ice, reflecting the harsh midday sun as he savored our discomfiture. As per the bylaws, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, he began, his voice smooth, devoid of any real sympathy. Any structural alteration to a property, whether internal or external, that impacts the aesthetic or perceived value of an adjacent lot, requires prior approval from the Architectural Review Board, and, in some cases, the full Community Council. I stared at him, my mouth agape. Aesthetic? Perceived value? What are you talking about, Mr. Finch? We put up a privacy fence. It's on our property, well within our boundaries. How could that possibly affect anyone else's property value? Jessica, standing beside me, gripped my arm, her knuckles white. And why are we only hearing about this now? After the fence is built? We checked the HOA guidelines, we read the covenants. There was nothing about a privacy fence needing special approval. Finch chuckled, a dry rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. But that's where the nuance lies, Mrs. Miller. The guidelines state any permanent structural addition or alteration. While a simple picket fence might be considered minor, a 6-foot solid wooden privacy fence, especially one of this imposing nature, changes the visual landscape quite dramatically. Creates a sense of enclosure, a barrier. Not exactly the open, welcoming aesthetic we strive for here in Blackwood Estates. He gestured vaguely with a manicured hand towards the pristine lawn stretching out behind him. Imposing. I scoffed, my voice rising. It's a fence. It's designed to give us privacy from the construction next door, which, by the way, did get approved, even though it's a monstrosity that blocks our view and generates noise from dawn till dusk. And that, Finch said, holding up a finger, cutting me off, was approved because the plans were submitted, reviewed, and found to be in compliance with the long-term vision for the community. Your fence, however, was not. And certain residents have expressed concerns. Significant concerns, I might add. Certain residents? Jessica echoed, her voice tight with suppressed anger. Who? And what exactly are their concerns? Finch's gaze drifted past us, towards the newly erected metal bars that now caged our property. Well, the primary concern, of course, is the precedent. If everyone starts erecting these barriers, Blackwood Estates loses its charm, its uniformity. We're a community of open spaces, not fortresses. And then there's the issue of the exact placement. My heart began to pound. Placement? What about the placement? It's on our property line. Is it, Mr. Miller? Finch's smile didn't reach his eyes. Our recent survey, commissioned by the Community Council, indicates a slight encroachment. A matter of mere inches, perhaps, but inches that technically fall on communal property. A sliver of the walkway easement, to be precise. I felt a cold dread spread through me. This was absurd. We had our own survey done meticulously, before the fence even went up. That's impossible. We had a professional survey done. It clearly showed the fence was entirely on our land. But ours was done by the official Blackwood Estate surveyor, Mr. Harrison. He's been handling our community's boundaries for decades. His word, I assure you, carries considerable weight with the council. Finch paused, letting his words hang in the air. And then there's the matter of the materials. The wood you've chosen, while sturdy, doesn't quite match the approved palette for external structures. It's a bit rustic. We prefer something more in line with the established aesthetic. Perhaps a wrought iron, or a lighter stained cedar. I wanted to scream. This was a shakedown, pure and simple. They were piling on, inventing reasons, twisting rules. So what are you saying, Mr. Finch? Are you saying we have to tear down our fence? Oh heavens no, Mr. Miller, Finch said, a feigned look of concern crossing his face. That would be quite a waste, wouldn't it? No, the council has considered your situation with great care. Given that the fence is already constructed, and to avoid undue financial burden on you, they've presented a compromise. Jessica and I exchanged a wary look. A compromise from these people felt more like a trap. The council understands that you desire privacy, especially with the ongoing construction next door. However, the integrity of Blackwood Estate's appearance and property lines must be maintained. So, the solution is rather elegant, if I do say so myself. Finch gestured towards the metal bars that now surrounded our property. These temporary barriers will remain in place, ensuring no further encroachment and providing a visual reminder of the community's standards, until a permanent solution is implemented. A permanent solution? Jessica asked, her voice barely a whisper. What permanent solution? You have two options, Mrs. Miller, Finch explained, his tone suddenly businesslike. Option 1. You can submit new plans for a fence that does meet the aesthetic and material guidelines, and that is precisely situated on your property line as verified by Mr. Harrison's survey. This would, of course, involve removing the current fence and installing a new one. All costs, naturally, would be borne by you. My blood ran cold. Tear down a brand new fence and build another one, just to satisfy their arbitrary whims? It would cost a fortune. And option 2? I asked, my voice strained. Finch's smile widened, revealing a flash of genuine satisfaction. Option 2 is simpler, and perhaps more palatable for you. The council has decided that, in lieu of demanding the complete removal and reconstruction of your fence, you may retain it under certain conditions. You would need to sign an agreement acknowledging the encroachment and the aesthetic deviation. This agreement would include a monthly aesthetic compliance fee. A small levy, really, to offset the perceived devaluation your fence causes to the surrounding properties and to contribute to the Community Beautification Fund. This fee would be in addition to your regular HOA dues, of course. I stared at him, utterly speechless. An aesthetic compliance fee? This was extortion, pure and simple. They were essentially charging us rent for our own fence on our own property. And what about the bars? Jessica asked, pointing at the metal cage. Do they come down if we choose option 2? Finch nodded slowly. Indeed. Once the agreement is signed and the first compliance fee is paid, the temporary barriers would be removed. Consider them a placeholder, a gentle reminder of the responsibilities that come with living in a community like Blackwood Estates. Responsibilities? I exploded. You're talking about extortion. You're holding us hostage with these ridiculous rules and fabricated surveys. We won't pay a dime. Finch's expression hardened. The polite facade slipped, revealing the steel underneath. Mr. Miller, I understand your frustration, but these are the rules. These are the bylaws that keep our community pristine, exclusive, and highly desirable. You signed the agreement when you purchased your home. To refuse would be a violation of those very covenants. And violations, as you know, carry consequences. Consequences. I repeated, my voice laced with defiance, despite the growing pit in my stomach. Indeed. Escalating fines, legal action, and eventually, should you remain in non-compliance, the council has the authority to take measures to rectify the situation themselves and bill you for all associated costs, including the cost of removing your fence and installing one of their choosing. And of course, the temporary barriers would remain until such time. His gaze flickered to the metal cage again, then back to my face, a silent promise of prolonged discomfort. He made it sound so reasonable, so procedural, but the implication was clear. They would bankrupt us, break us, or force us out. We were caught in a bureaucratic nightmare orchestrated by a man who clearly relished his power. Jessica, usually so composed, looked utterly devastated. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and despair. We had bought our dream home, a sanctuary, and now it was becoming a prison. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of construction equipment from the neighboring lot, a constant reminder of the very reason we'd put up the fence in the first place. Finch waited patiently, a predator observing his prey. He knew he had us. He had cornered us, not with brute force, but with finely crafted legalities and the weight of an entire community council behind him. The rules of Blackwood Estates weren't suggestions. They were shackles, and we were feeling their cold, relentless grip tighten around us. It wasn't just about the fence anymore. It was about control. It was about proving a point, and we were the point they were making. I looked at the fence, then at the bars, then back at Finch, whose triumphant smirk was now barely concealed. The sheer audacity of it, the calculated cruelty, was breathtaking. We had to fight this. But how? Against an entire community? Against a system designed to crush dissent? We were two against an army, and they had already breached our defenses. The next move was ours, but every option felt like walking further into their trap. The sun was setting, casting long, menacing shadows across our once inviting lawn, making the metal bars gleam with an ominous finality. We were truly, utterly alone. The thought sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening chill. The shiver was a premonition, a cold hand squeezing my heart. Jessica sat on the sofa, her face pale in the dimming light, staring blankly at the newly reinforced windows. The metal bars, thick and unyielding, crisscrossed our view of the manicured street, turning our home into a cage. We were prisoners not by walls or guards we could see, but by an insidious system that had silently, systematically stripped away our freedom. That night was a blur of whispered anxieties and restless pacing. Sleep was an impossible luxury. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, felt like a watchful eye, a silent judgment. I tried the phone again, a futile gesture. Dead. The internet the same. Our lifeline to the outside world had been severed, just as effectively as the bars had severed our physical escape. What do we do, Michael? Jessica's voice was a fragile whisper in the oppressive silence of our living room. They've taken everything. Our car, our ability to leave, our phones. What next? Her question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. What was next? Would they come for us? For Emily? The thought of our daughter, innocent and oblivious in her room, was a fresh wave of terror. I had to protect her. I had to get us out. I spent the next morning methodically checking every inch of the house. The doors were bolted from the outside with heavy-duty locks I'd never seen before. The windows, not only barred but also sealed shut, reinforced with some kind of industrial-grade adhesive. It was a fortress designed to keep us in, not out. There was no escape. A knock on the door jolted us. My heart hammered against my ribs. Jessica gasped, grabbing my arm. It was Mr. Henderson. His usual cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by a stern, almost pitying expression. He stood on our porch, impeccably dressed as always, holding a small sealed envelope. "Michael, Jessica," he said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "I regret to inform you that due to your repeated infractions regarding community guidelines, and your recent, shall we say, unauthorized attempts to contact external entities, the HOA has been forced to implement further measures." He held out the envelope. My hand trembled as I took it. It felt heavy, not with paper, but with the weight of our future. "This outlines your new operational parameters within the community," he continued, his gaze sweeping over the barred windows. "It also details the updated protocols for your family, particularly regarding young Emily. We understand this may be a difficult adjustment, but these rules are for the collective good, and for your continued safety." "Our safety?" Jessica choked out, her voice rising. "You're holding us hostage. This isn't safety, it's a prison." Mr. Henderson's expression hardened. "Mrs. Miller, I would advise you to choose your words carefully. This community provides unparalleled security and a quality of life unmatched anywhere else. Your family is privileged to be here. Do not mistake our benevolence for weakness." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Your utilities will remain active, and basic provisions will be delivered bi-weekly. However, all non-essential services, including your personal vehicles and any external communication, have been permanently revoked. Furthermore, any attempt to tamper with the new security measures will result in immediate and severe consequences." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing. Your daughter, Emily, will no longer be permitted to attend the community's recreational facilities or play in the common areas unsupervised. Her activities will be restricted to your property, under your direct supervision, until further notice. This is for her protection and to prevent any further disruptions." The implication was clear. Emily was a hostage, a leverage point. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about punishing us. It was about ensuring our absolute compliance through the most vulnerable member of our family. I tore open the envelope after he left. Inside, a single sheet of paper, printed with the familiar, elegant font of the HOA communications. But the content was anything but elegant. It was a list. A new set of rules, more restrictive, more dehumanizing than anything we had encountered before. Asterisk Rule 17, Curfew Enforcement. All residents of 1424 Primrose Lane must remain indoors between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Any violation will result in immediate security response. Asterisk Rule 18, Resource Allocation. Access to community-wide amenities, including the pool, clubhouse, and tennis courts, is hereby revoked. Asterisk Rule 19, Inter-resident contact. Direct communication with other residents, beyond a brief, necessary exchange, is strictly prohibited. Suspicious interactions will be monitored. Asterisk Rule 20, Surveillance compliance. All internal and external surveillance systems installed by the HOA are non-negotiable and must remain operational at all times. Any attempt to disable or obstruct these systems will be met with the highest level of punitive action. Asterisk Rule 21. Child Protocol. Children of non-compliant residents are to remain within their designated property boundaries at all times. Social interaction with other children is suspended until full compliance is achieved. Educational materials will be provided. Educational materials provided? They were going to homeschool Emily, effectively isolating her from her friends from any normal life. This was psychological warfare. They weren't just punishing us, they were breaking us, systematically dismantling our lives. Jessica read over my shoulder, her breath hitched with each new rule. They're turning us into ghosts, she whispered, her voice trembling. Invisible, untouchable, nobody can help us. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked out through the bars at the pristine street. A few houses down, Sarah was tending her rose garden, her back to us. Was she aware of what was happening? Did she see our barred windows? Or was she simply choosing to ignore it? A casualty of the community's pervasive fear? I remembered our first few weeks here, the friendliness, the welcoming smiles. Had it all been an act? Were they all just playing their roles, terrified of becoming the next non-compliant residents? A sudden desperate idea sparked in my mind. What if I could communicate with Sarah? A subtle signal, something the omnipresent cameras wouldn't pick up. A note, maybe? But how? The windows were sealed. I watched Sarah for a long time. She moved with a practiced grace, snipping dead blooms, occasionally glancing around the perfectly manicured street. Her gaze never lingered on our house. It was as if we were already invisible. Later that afternoon, the first educational materials arrived. A large unmarked box was placed on our porch by a silent, uniformed security guard. Inside, not textbooks but pre-recorded video lessons on ancient, clunky VHS tapes, along with a small, antiquated VCR. No internet, no modern tech. Just this relic from the past, ensuring Emily's education was entirely controlled, entirely isolated. The message was chillingly clear. Not only were we cut off, but our children would be indoctrinated into their twisted version of reality. They wouldn't just control our present, they would shape our future, through Emily. As the days bled into weeks, the isolation became a living entity, a suffocating blanket woven from silence and fear. Jessica retreated further into herself, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by despair. Emily, initially confused and restless, gradually grew quieter, her questions about playing with her friends replaced by a resigned acceptance of her new, confined world. She spent hours watching the antiquated educational videos, her small face illuminated by the flickering screen, her innocence slowly eroding under the weight of this forced reality. I, on the other hand, felt a burning rage festering beneath my skin. I couldn't accept this. I wouldn't. I paced the house like a caged animal, my eyes constantly scanning, searching for any weakness, any crack in their seemingly impenetrable system. I tried talking to Jessica to rekindle her fighting spirit, but she just shook her head, her eyes vacant. "It's no use, Michael," she'd say, her voice hollow. "They're everywhere. They know everything. We can't fight them. We just exist now." Her resignation was a heavier burden than the bars on the windows. It was the sound of our hope dying. One evening, staring out at the perfectly illuminated street, a faint flicker caught my eye. It was from Robert and Sarah's house 2 doors down, a light in their upstairs window flashing erratically. Not a normal flicker, but a distinct pattern. Morse code? My mind raced, grabbing onto the possibility like a drowning man to a life raft. I had learned a little Morse code in my Boy Scout days decades ago. Could it be? Was someone trying to communicate? I focused, straining to decipher the dots and dashes. It was slow, agonizing work, piecing together the broken, hesitant flashes. Asterisk doente, tar ust, chindarsoen, asterisk. My breath caught in my throat. Henderson, the man who delivered our death sentence. The man who had always been the face of the HOA. This was a warning, a desperate cry from someone else trapped in this gilded cage. Asterisk HELP, who's asterisk. The message repeated, growing fainter, then stopped abruptly. The light went out, plunging their window into darkness. Had they been caught? Or had they simply given up? A surge of adrenaline coursed through me, chasing away the despair. Someone else was fighting. Someone else knew. This wasn't just us against the community. It was us against them. The true them. The ones pulling the strings, the ones Henderson worked for. I had to respond. I had to let them know we received the message. But how? My house was a blackout zone. I couldn't risk using a flashlight. The cameras were everywhere. I looked around our living room, my gaze falling on Emily's antiquated VCR. It had a small red power indicator light. It was dim, but maybe, just maybe, if I could manipulate the power button quickly enough, I could send a message back. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all I had. I waited until the dead of night, when the community was steeped in its unnatural silence. Jessica and Emily were asleep, their breathing shallow and even. My heart pounded as I crept to the VCR, my fingers trembling on the power button. I practiced the pattern in my head. So I started, a tiny red flicker against the blackness of the barred window. 1, 2, 3 short flashes, then 3 long ones, then 3 short ones again. I repeated it over and over, my eyes darting to Robert and Sarah's window, praying for a sign, any sign that they saw it. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My hand ached, my eyes were burning. Nothing. Their window remained dark. Had I been too slow? Too subtle? Or had they truly been silenced? Just as despair began to creep back in, a faint, almost imperceptible flicker responded from their window. Not a light, but something else. A slight movement, a shadow against the darkness, waving, slowly, deliberately. A single distinct wave. They saw me. They knew. It wasn't a message, not really, but it was a connection. A spark of defiance in the suffocating darkness. It meant we weren't entirely alone. It meant there was still a chance, however slim, to fight back. But fight back against what, exactly? The rules? The HO? Henderson? Or something far more sinister? Lurking beneath the perfectly manicured lawns of Primrose Lane? The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Henderson wasn't the top of the pyramid. He was just another pawn, another enforcer. There was someone else, someone higher, pulling all the strings. And they were powerful enough to turn an entire community into their personal, perfectly controlled prison. The rules weren't just suggestions. They were absolute, and the consequences for breaking them were terrifyingly real. The stark reality of their situation settled over Michael and Jessica like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. The air in their own home, once a sanctuary, now felt thin, tainted by the knowledge that unseen eyes were always watching, and unseen hands were always ready to tighten their grip. They were not just residents, they were unwitting participants in a meticulously constructed charade, living under the absolute dominion of a power so pervasive, it turned every neighbor into a potential informant, every interaction into a calculated risk. Sleep offered no escape. Michael found himself staring at the ceiling, replaying every minor infraction he'd ever committed, every casual conversation he'd had, wondering if he'd already crossed an invisible line he couldn't even perceive. Jessica, beside him, was equally restless, her mind racing through the community's seemingly innocuous rules, now reread through a lens of chilling dread. The precisely manicured lawns, the uniform house colors, the enforced quiet hours. They weren't about aesthetics or peace anymore. They were about control, about conformity, about stripping away individual will until only the collective, compliant whole remained. The next few days were a blur of heightened awareness. Every glance from a passing car, every rustle in the bushes, every polite but firm reminder from a neighbor about a misplaced trash can felt like a direct message from the council. The friendly smiles of their fellow residents now seemed like masks, hiding either complicity or terror. Michael and Jessica found themselves whispering even when alone, their voices instinctively lowering, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They were prisoners not of bars and walls but of fear and the unknown. Then came the incident with David Miller. David and his wife Emily had moved into the community about 6 months after Michael and Jessica. They were a cheerful, outgoing couple, full of energy and a refreshing disregard for the subtle social niceties that governed the older residents. David, a software engineer with a penchant for tinkering, had decided to install a smart home security system, complete with a small, unobtrusive camera doorbell and motion-activated floodlights, far more advanced than the standard systems most homes had. It was a minor deviation from the unwritten norm of discreet, almost invisible security, but certainly not a violation of any written rule, or so they thought. A week after David's installation, a polite but firm notice appeared in his mailbox, and signed merely stating, Exterior modifications must be approved by the Architectural Review Board. Please submit your plans for review. David, ever the pragmatist, shrugged it off. He had checked the bylaws. There was no mention of doorbell cameras or floodlights requiring approval. He assumed it was a standard, slightly overzealous HOA notice. He ignored it. A few days later, the floodlights on David's house began to malfunction. Not all at once, but one by one. First, the one by the garage flickered erratically, then died. A few nights later, the one on the front porch followed suit. David, annoyed, blamed faulty wiring or cheap components. He replaced them, only for the new ones to fail within days. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. No one saw anyone tampering with them. No evidence of vandalism, just a persistent, inexplicable malfunction. Then, David's smart doorbell camera started acting up. It would record phantom movements, send false alerts, and occasionally, its live feed would freeze or display static for hours. David, being tech-savvy, spent countless hours troubleshooting, convinced it was a software glitch or a network issue. He even bought a new, more expensive system only for the same problems to recur. His frustration mounted. Emily, meanwhile, started noticing other things. Their mail sometimes arrived late or not at all. Packages left on their porch occasionally went missing, only to reappear days later, sometimes opened, sometimes not. The community's subtle ostracism began. At the weekly Saturday morning coffee gathering at the clubhouse, usually a vibrant social hub, conversations would subtly shift or cease when David and Emily approached. Neighbors who once waved enthusiastically now offered curt nods. Their children, Leo and Mia, started complaining that their friends wouldn't play with them anymore, or would suddenly excuse themselves from playdates. The kids, innocent and unaware, just knew they were being excluded. David, stubborn and increasingly agitated, decided to confront the HOA directly. He scheduled a meeting demanding answers about the notices, the malfunctioning equipment, and the sudden chill from his neighbors. Michael and Jessica, having heard whispers, watched with a growing sense of dread. They knew David was walking into a trap, but they were powerless to warn him without exposing themselves. The meeting was a farce. David was met by a stone-faced HOA committee, none of whom admitted to sending the original notice. They listened to his complaints about his lights and camera with polite, blank expressions, offering vague suggestions about electrical issues or internet interference. When he brought up the community's social shift, they merely advised him to be more proactive in engaging with his neighbors. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. David left the meeting seething, convinced he was dealing with an incompetent, passive-aggressive bureaucracy. He decided to fight back. He started leaving his broken floodlights unreplaced, a small act of defiance. He put up a sign in his yard, not overtly critical, but something like "Question everything." The council's response was swift and devastating, yet still perfectly within the bounds of plausible deniability. Within days, David, a highly sought-after software engineer, found his consulting contracts mysteriously drying up. Clients who had been loyal for years suddenly went silent or cited unforeseen budget reallocations. His online professional profile started receiving anonymous, subtly negative reviews that, while not outright defamatory, were enough to make potential new clients hesitate. His reputation, built over a decade, began to erode. Emily, a talented graphic designer, experienced similar professional setbacks. Her portfolio website, once a source of steady freelance work, mysteriously developed persistent errors, making it inaccessible to potential clients. Her email marketing campaigns landed straight in spam folders. Their financial stability, once rock solid, began to crumble. The final blow came when their son, Leo, a promising young soccer player, was inexplicably cut from the community's elite youth team, despite being one of its star players. The coach, a pleasant man named Kevin, offered vague platitudes about team dynamics and making tough choices, but his eyes held a flicker of something Michael and Jessica recognized: fear. Within 2 months, David and Emily Miller, once vibrant and hopeful, were shells of their former selves. Their house, once filled with laughter, was quiet. David's defiance had been crushed, not by direct confrontation, but by a systematic, invisible dismantling of their lives. They put their house up for sale, citing unforeseen family circumstances and a need for a fresh start. They sold it quickly at a significant loss to a buyer who seemed to appear out of nowhere. No one in the community spoke of their departure. They simply vanished, another erased memory. Michael and Jessica watched it all unfold, their blood turning to ice. David hadn't broken a major rule. He had merely questioned the system and dared to be different. His fate was a chilling, undeniable testament to the council's power. They didn't need to use overt violence or direct threats. They wielded social isolation, professional sabotage, and psychological warfare with surgical precision. The rules weren't just suggestions, they were absolute, and the consequences for breaking them were terrifyingly real, designed not to kill, but to utterly break a person, to make them disappear from the community's fabric without a single trace of foul play. The Millers' story was a stark warning, a living nightmare that solidified Michael and Jessica's understanding. They were trapped. Escape was not an option, and open defiance was suicide. Their only hope lay in understanding the architects of this prison, uncovering why such absolute control was necessary, and finding a weakness in the system that had consumed David and Emily. They had to play by the rules, at least on the surface, while secretly digging deeper into the dark heart of the community, into the very origins of the council and its suffocating grasp. Every perfectly mowed lawn, every identical mailbox, every forced smile now screamed a silent question. What secret was so vital, so profound, that an entire community had to be turned into a perfectly controlled, gilded cage to protect it? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating, wrapping around him like the tendrils of a nightmare he couldn't shake. Michael's perfectly manicured lawn, the scent of fresh-cut grass that usually soothed him, now felt like a stage set, a meticulously crafted illusion designed to conceal a monstrous truth. He looked at his living room, the tasteful decor, the smart home system he'd been so proud of, and a cold dread seeped into his bones. Every device, every sensor, every convenience was a potential eye, an ear, a silent observer in his own home. He wasn't just living here, he was being watched. The first thing he did was grab his phone, a desperate, almost instinctual need to reach out, to confirm his sanity, to scream into the void for help. He tried to call his sister Sarah back in Ohio, then his old college roommate Mark. The calls wouldn't connect. Not a busy signal, not a network error, just a dead, hollow silence. He tried his laptop, attempting to access a news site, any external link. The Wi-Fi showed full bars, but every page timed out. His email wouldn't load. It was like the internet existed only within the confines of the preserve, a carefully curated intranet designed to keep them isolated. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at him. He was truly cut off. This wasn't just about rules. This was about control, absolute and total. He felt a phantom tightening around his chest, the invisible chains of the gilded cage. He had to know. He had to find out what was happening. His mind raced, replaying every odd interaction, every subtle warning. David's knowing glances, Jessica's desperate plea, the unnerving perfection of everyone around him. The community center. That was the hub, the nerve center. It housed the administrative offices, the archives, the council chambers. If there was a truth to be found, it would be there. He waited until the dead of night, the kind of night where the moon hid behind a veil of clouds and even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. Dressed in dark clothing, he slipped out of his house, moving like a shadow across his own lawn. The air was still, heavy with an unnatural quiet. He avoided the main roads, cutting through backyards, using the dense hedges and carefully placed ornamental trees for cover. Each rustle of leaves, each snap of a twig beneath his foot, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He imagined eyes watching from every window, every security camera, every perfectly trimmed bush. Reaching the community center felt like infiltrating a fortress. It was a grand, colonial-style building, well lit even at this hour, but the lights seemed to cast more shadows than illuminate. He knew the main entrance would be locked and possibly alarmed. He remembered seeing a service entrance around the back, near the loading dock for deliveries. It was a long shot, but his only shot. He crept around the side, his heart thumping against his ribs like a trapped bird. The service door was steel, heavy and imposing. He tested the handle. Locked, of course. He scanned the area. No cameras immediately visible, but he knew better than to trust appearances. He pulled out the small lock-picking kit he'd bought on a whim years ago, a relic from a brief, misguided phase of wanting to be a hobbyist locksmith. He'd never thought he'd actually use it. His fingers, surprisingly steady, worked the delicate tools. The silence of the night magnified every tiny click, every metallic scrape. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not just from exertion, but from the sheer terror of being caught. What would happen if he was caught? A stern warning? Or something far, far worse? Something that lay hidden beneath the polite smiles and perfect lawns? After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, he felt a subtle give. A soft thunk as the tumblers aligned. The handle turned. He held his breath, slowly pushing the door open just enough to slip through. The interior was dark, smelling faintly of disinfectant and old paper. He was in a narrow service hallway. He used his phone's flashlight, set to its lowest beam, to navigate. He found a map of the building near a utility closet. His eyes immediately darted to the archives and records room, located in the basement, and the council chambers on the second floor. The archives seemed like the logical first stop. The descent into the basement was chilling. The air grew colder, heavier. Rows of filing cabinets, stacked high with what looked like decades of community records, stretched out before him in the dim light. This was it. This was where the truth would be buried. He started with the most recent files, looking for anything out of place, anything related to the project or unusual community activities. Most of it was mundane. Landscaping invoices, HOA meeting minutes, resident complaints about overgrown hedges. Then he found a section labeled Resident Profiles Active. His own name wasn't there. He found Jessica's, though. He pulled her file. Inside, nestled amongst typical resident paperwork, were medical records. Not just standard health forms, but detailed psychological evaluations, behavioral analyses, even genetic markers. The dates stretched back years, long before she even moved into the preserve. It was less a medical history and more a comprehensive dossier, charting her personality, her vulnerabilities, her responses to various stimuli. And then he saw it, a recurring notation, Subject 7B Compliance Assessment. Subject, compliance. A shiver ran down his spine. He flipped through more files. David Miller's file. Subject 4A Oversight and Reinforcement. Emily Carter, the friendly woman from next door. Subject 12C Social Integration and Stability. Everyone was a subject. Everyone had a designation. This wasn't a community. It was a controlled experiment. The rules weren't just for order, they were parameters. The perfect lives, the forced smiles, the relentless conformity. It was all part of a grand, terrifying design. He kept digging, his fingers trembling as he opened file after file. Each one was a chilling confirmation. They weren't just being observed, they were being managed. Their lives were meticulously crafted, their interactions monitored, their behavior subtly manipulated. The entire community was a living laboratory. Then he found a file simply marked Project Genesis Phase 3. This wasn't a residence file. This was something else. He opened it carefully. Inside, there were no names, only flowcharts and dense technical jargon. Words like neurological baseline, environmental conditioning, socio-behavioral modeling, and genetic predisposition for conformity jumped out at him. He skimmed further, his breath catching in his throat. The document detailed a long-term study, spanning generations, designed to isolate and cultivate specific human traits within a controlled environment. The goal? To create the ideal citizen, perfectly compliant, perfectly productive, perfectly content. And the preserve, this beautiful, sinister community, was the current iteration of that experiment. His eyes fell upon a particularly disturbing section, Anomalies and Deviations. It listed instances of residents exhibiting non-compliant behavior, unusual curiosity, or resistant tendencies. Next to each instance were proposed remediation protocols. Some were benign, increased social integration, counseling. Others were chilling, memory recalibration, pharmacological adjustment, and then a single ominous word, relocation. Relocation. That explained Jessica's terror. That explained the disappearances. They weren't just moved, they were removed. What happened to those who couldn't be recalibrated? He found his own name listed under Anomalies and Deviations. The entry was recent. Subject 23F, Elevated Curiosity Index. Developing Independent Inquiry. Proximity to 7B. Jessica, a factor. Requires immediate assessment and potential remediation. He was already on their radar. They knew. They had been watching him, assessing him. His every move, every question, every moment of doubt had been recorded, analyzed. He was a variable, an outlier that needed to be brought back into line or removed. A sudden sharp clang echoed from upstairs, followed by a muffled voice. Someone was in the building. His heart leaped into his throat. He wasn't alone. He had to go. He couldn't risk being found with these files. He quickly but carefully replaced the Project Genesis file and Jessica's file, trying to leave no trace. He tucked a small, folded piece of paper he'd found inside the Project Genesis file into his pocket. A handwritten note with a series of numbers and letters that looked like a code or coordinates. It was a desperate gamble, but he needed something, anything, tangible evidence. He extinguished his phone light, plunging the basement into near total darkness. He could hear footsteps now, closer, descending the stairs. Heavy, deliberate steps. They were coming for him. He was trapped, deep in the belly of the beast, and the rules of the preserve were no longer suggestions. They were a death sentence. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, something old and forgotten. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the heavy steps that now vibrated through the floorboards above him. He scanned the dimly lit basement, eyes darting from the rusted shelves overflowing with forgotten relics to the imposing, locked steel door he tried to pry open earlier. No escape. Not through there. He was beneath the very house of the community's leader, likely the nerve center of whatever sinister operation kept the preserve so pristine, so perfectly controlled. The footsteps paused directly above him. A creak, a groan of old wood, then a low guttural murmur, too indistinct to make out words, but laced with an undeniable menace. Michael pressed himself against a cold stone wall, trying to melt into the shadows, to become invisible. His breath hitched in his throat. He reached for the only thing he had, his phone, still recording, a silent witness to his impending doom. But what good was a recording if no one ever heard it? Then the first figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs, emerging from the gloom like a specter. It was Mr. Henderson, his usually placid face now a mask of grim determination, his eyes devoid of any warmth. Behind him, two more men descended, hulking figures in dark, nondescript uniforms, their faces impassive, almost robotic. These weren't the friendly faces of the neighborhood watch. These were enforcers. Mr. Henderson's gaze swept the room, pausing on the steel door, then settling on Michael, who knew in that instant that his hiding attempt had been futile. There was no surprise in Henderson's eyes, only a chilling certainty. "Michael, we knew you'd find your way down here eventually." Henderson's voice was calm, unnervingly so, a stark contrast to the frantic pounding in Michael's chest. "You've been a persistent nuisance, haven't you? Always asking questions. Always digging." Michael pushed off the wall, trying to project an air of defiance he didn't feel. "What is this place, Henderson? What are you doing here? Where are the others?" Henderson chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that sent shivers down Michael's spine. "The others? They're where they belong, Michael. Safe. Undisturbed. Unlike you." He gestured vaguely around the basement. "This place? This is the heart of the preserve. The engine that keeps our paradise running smoothly." One of the uniformed men stepped forward, his hand resting on a heavy-looking baton at his hip. Michael instinctively took a step back. "You broke the rules, Michael," Henderson continued, his voice hardening. "Repeatedly. You ignored the warnings. You trespassed. You interfered. You even tried to corrupt one of our own." His eyes narrowed. "Jessica, a good woman before you put ideas in her head. Jessica, what have you done to her?" Michael demanded, a surge of fear for her overriding his own terror. "She's being re-educated," Henderson said dismissively. "A temporary setback. She'll understand in time the importance of conformity, the necessity of order." He walked towards a large ornate wooden chest in the center of the room, brushing dust from its surface. "You see, Michael, the preserve isn't just a community. It's an experiment. A perfect society, free from the chaos and degeneration of the outside world." "An experiment? With people's lives?" Michael scoffed, trying to buy time to understand. "A necessary one," Henderson corrected, looking up, his eyes burning with an almost zealous fervor. "The world outside is failing. Morality is eroding, crime is rampant, and individuality has become a destructive force. Here we cultivate true harmony. We eliminate discord. We ensure everyone contributes to the collective good." He opened the chest. Inside, not gold or jewels, but neatly stacked leather-bound ledgers and what looked like old, delicate medical instruments. Michael's stomach churned. Our founders understood that true peace requires sacrifice, Henderson explained, pulling out a thick ledger. They understood that human nature, left unchecked, would always revert to its lowest common denominator. So they devised a system. A set of rules, yes, but more than that. A process. What process? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Henderson's smile was chilling. The process of purification. When an individual proves unwilling or unable to adhere to the core tenets of the preserve, discretion, loyalty, conformity, and respect for the collective, they become a contaminant, pathogen, and pathogens must be removed. Michael felt a cold dread seep into his bones. Removed? What does that mean? What did you do to David? To Emily? Henderson sighed, a performance of regret. David was a fine man, a devoted father, but he became restless. He started questioning. He spoke of leaving, of taking his family. That, Michael, is the ultimate betrayal of our shared vision. Emily, she was simply collateral, a necessary casualty of her father's foolishness. We couldn't allow her to carry his disruptive genes forward. Michael stared aghast. You killed them? You murdered them. We repurposed them, Henderson corrected, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Their bodies, their energy, they contribute to the preserve in other ways. Nothing is wasted here, Michael. Every resource is utilized to its fullest potential. He gestured to the various pipes and conduits running along the basement walls, some leading off into the darkness. Our hydroponics, our energy systems, all benefit from the cycle of life and what comes after. Michael finally understood the true horror. The pristine lawns, the vibrant flowers, the endless energy. It was all built on a foundation of human sacrifice. The rules weren't about maintaining order, they were about identifying subjects for their gruesome purification process. You're insane, Michael breathed, repulsion warring with a desperate need to escape. No, Michael. We are pragmatic. We are the future. And you, unfortunately, are an anomaly, a rogue element that cannot be integrated. Henderson closed the ledger, his gaze unwavering. Your curiosity, your stubborn independence. These are traits that disrupt the harmony. You cannot be allowed to spread your influence. The two uniformed men took another step forward, their movements synchronized, menacing. Michael's mind raced. He was trapped, but he was a reporter. His instinct was to expose, to reveal. He still had his phone. If he could just... He lunged, not at the men, but towards a narrow gap between two towering stacks of crates, hoping to put some distance between himself and his captors. The chase was on. He scrambled over boxes, sending old tools clattering, desperately searching for any hidden exit, any forgotten window, anything that could offer a sliver of hope. Henderson merely watched, a slow predatory smile spreading across his face. There's nowhere to run, Michael. This basement is a self-contained system, designed to keep things in and out. Michael could hear the heavy thuds of the enforcers behind him, closing in. He reached the far wall, a dead end. His fingers scrabbled against rough stone, finding nothing. He turned cornered, panting, his eyes wild. The two men advanced, their faces still expressionless like automatons. You don't have to do this, Michael pleaded, his voice hoarse. People will find out. The outside world will know what you're doing here. Henderson stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The outside world doesn't care, Michael. They're too busy with their own chaos. And even if they did, who would believe the ramblings of a disappeared journalist about a perfect gated community? We are too well insulated, too well connected. Our benefactors ensure that. He paused, a flicker of something in his eyes that could almost be pity. It's a shame, really. You could have been an asset. Your intelligence, your drive. But you chose to fight the current. Now you'll become part of it. One of the enforcers raised his baton. Michael braced himself, his heart a frantic drum solo in his chest. This was it. The end. His life flashing before his eyes. Not in a grand montage, but in fragmented images. Sarah's worried face, the thrill of a scoop, the quiet satisfaction of a well-written article. But then, just as the baton began its descent, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the stone floor. It was subtle, easily dismissed as an illusion born of his fear, but Michael felt it. A vibration deep and resonant, unlike anything he'd felt before. The enforcer hesitated, his brow furrowing slightly. Henderson, too, seemed to notice, his gaze flicking upwards, a hint of concern finally breaking through his composed facade. Another tremor, slightly stronger this time, accompanied by a low, distant groan, as if the very earth beneath them was stirring. Dust rained down from the ceiling in fine particles. What was that? Michael seized on the distraction, his mind racing for any advantage. Henderson's eyes narrowed, a different kind of calculation now replacing his smug certainty. An instability. Nothing to concern you, Michael. Just a minor adjustment. But his voice lacked its usual conviction. He snapped a command to the enforcers. Finish this. Quickly. The men moved again, but their previous unwavering focus was now fractionally split. Michael saw it. He saw the crack in their perfect, controlled world. The tremor grew, a deep rumble now, making the rusted shelves rattle. A small section of the ceiling above them cracked, sending a shower of plaster dust onto the floor. Henderson cursed under his breath, his eyes darting around the basement with genuine alarm. The integrity, this shouldn't be happening now. This wasn't a natural earthquake. This was something else. Something they were doing or something they had unleashed. Michael's reporter instincts screamed at him. This was a story bigger than he could have imagined. This wasn't just about a creepy gated community. It was about something unstable, something breaking down. He twisted, ducking under the descending baton, pain flaring in his shoulder as it grazed him. He scrambled past the now distracted enforcer, towards a section of the wall where the tremor seemed strongest. He saw it, a hairline crack, glowing faintly with a strange bluish light, almost imperceptible. What was behind that wall? What was causing this? The preserve was collapsing, literally and figuratively, from within. This wasn't just his death sentence. It was the entire community's. And he, somehow, was at the epicenter of it all. He had to know why. He had to find a way to expose it, even if it meant sacrificing himself. The rules of the preserve were no longer suggestions, nor were they a death sentence. They were a lie, and the truth was about to tear everything apart. Michael felt a cold certainty settle over him. There was no going back, no turning away from the abyss he'd glimpsed. He spent the rest of the night meticulously planning, his mind racing through every detail of the preserve, every blind spot, every forgotten access point. His childhood explorations with David, the ones his parents had always lectured him about, were now his greatest asset. He remembered the old utility tunnels beneath the community, ostensibly for maintenance, but largely unused and unmonitored. A network of forgotten passages, a way in and out without tripping the digital tripwires Mr. Harrison had so painstakingly woven. Dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but Michael barely noticed. He moved with a quiet urgency, gathering what he needed. A small toolkit, a burner phone he'd kept hidden for years, a power bank. He left a note for Jessica, brief and cryptic, telling her he loved her, that he would be back, and that if he wasn't, she needed to trust her instincts and leave. He knew the risk he was asking her to take, but he also knew she was stronger than she realized. Under the cover of the early morning, he slipped out, using the dense foliage bordering the golf course as a natural shield. He found the access hatch to the utility tunnels near the perimeter fence, cleverly disguised beneath a thick bush. It was rusted, stiff, but with a grunt and a twist of his wrench, he forced it open. The air inside was cool, damp, and smelled of earth and old concrete. He descended, the hatch clanging shut above him, plunging him into near darkness. His phone's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, guiding him deeper into the labyrinth. He walked for what felt like hours, the silence oppressive, broken only by the drip of water and his own footsteps. He navigated by memory, recalling the rough layout, the subtle changes in pipe configurations that marked different sectors. His destination, the main administrative building, specifically, the floor beneath Mr. Harrison's office, where he suspected the true heart of the preserve's operations lay. Finally, he found the access point, a maintenance panel hidden behind a large water heater. It was locked but not impenetrable. He worked quickly, his hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The panel creaked open, revealing a narrow crawl space that led directly into the server room he'd seen earlier. This was it. He slipped inside, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The server room hummed with a low, constant thrum, the blinking lights of countless machines illuminating the racks. He moved to the main console, a large screen displaying network schematics. He bypassed the initial security with surprising ease, remembering a backdoor password he'd seen Mr. Harrison type years ago, a simple, almost arrogant oversight that spoke volumes about the man's confidence in his impenetrable system. What Michael found was far more horrifying than anything he had imagined. It wasn't just a database of violations. It was a comprehensive social engineering project. Files on every resident, meticulously detailed psychological profiles, behavioral patterns, even genetic markers. The rules weren't just for order. They were a sophisticated profiling system designed to identify deviants, anyone who questioned, anyone who showed too much individuality, anyone who didn't conform to the precise parameters of their perfect community. He found David's file, not a record of his death, but a reintegration protocol. David hadn't died. He'd been removed, his mind subtly altered, his memories of the preserve suppressed, and sent to another similar community, another preserve, to live out a new, perfectly compliant life. A chilling video snippet showed David, looking healthier, happier, but with an unnerving blankness in his eyes, introducing himself to new neighbors in a community that looked identical to his old one, just with different faces. The same perfect lawns, the same smiling, vacant residents. Emily's file was similar, marked for re-education and reassignment to a facility dedicated to creative realignment. She was too artistic, too free-spirited. They weren't killing people. They were erasing them, reshaping them into compliant components of their grand design. And then he saw Jessica's file, marked Observation Phase 2 Potential Non-Compliance. Her recent grief, her questioning of David's disappearance, her growing unease, it had all been meticulously recorded. She was next. They were watching her, waiting for the opportune moment to reintegrate her. The preserve wasn't just a wealthy enclave. It was a meticulously curated human ecosystem, a living laboratory dedicated to perfecting societal stability through absolute control. Mr. Harrison wasn't just a manager. He was a high-level administrator in a vast, interconnected network of these preserves, all designed to test and refine the ultimate blueprint for a perfectly compliant human society. The lie wasn't just about the rules. It was about the very nature of their existence, the illusion of freedom within a gilded cage. Michael felt a surge of cold fury. He connected his burner phone to the network, using a small preloaded program to bypass the firewalls and begin uploading as much data as he could. Files, videos, internal memos outlining the Project Eden initiative, the chillingly clinical language used to describe human beings as variables and components. He targeted obscure, independent news outlets, human rights organizations, anyone outside the system who might listen. It was slow, agonizingly slow, but the data was moving. He was racing against the clock, hands flying across the keyboard, when a voice, calm and deliberate, cut through the hum of the servers. "I knew you wouldn't be able to resist, Michael." Michael froze. Mr. Harrison stood in the doorway, a faint smile playing on his lips, not a trace of surprise in his eyes. He wasn't alone. Two burly security guards, men Michael had seen patrolling the streets, stood behind him, their faces impassive. "It's disappointing, really," Mr. Harrison continued, stepping further into the room. "You were always such a promising candidate. High intellect, strong sense of loyalty, a desire for order. You nearly made it." "Made it where, Harrison?" Michael spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. "Into your twisted experiment? You're erasing people, destroying lives." Harrison chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Eradicating chaos, Michael. We are building a better future, a stable society. People like David, like Emily, they are necessary data points. Their deviations help us refine the system, identify the parameters of true compliance. And then they are given a chance to contribute in a way that benefits everyone." He gestured vaguely with a hand. "They are thriving, Michael. Truly. Just not in the way you understand thriving. You brainwashed them," Michael accused, his eyes burning. "You took away their free will." "Free will is an illusion, Michael," Harrison said, his voice taking on a chillingly academic tone. "A messy, unpredictable variable. We offer clarity, purpose, belonging. A life free from the anxieties of choice. Isn't that what everyone truly desires deep down?" His gaze sharpened, fixing on the screen where Michael's upload progress bar crawled forward. You're attempting to broadcast our proprietary protocols. A futile gesture. Is it? Michael challenged, glancing at the progress bar. It was at 80%. The world deserves to know what you're doing here. What you're doing to people. The world isn't ready for this truth, Michael, Harrison countered, shaking his head slowly. They cling to their illusions. And even if they were, your little upload won't make it past our filters. We control the narrative inside and out. It's too vast, too deeply embedded. You underestimate me, Michael said, his fingers hovering over the send command. And you underestimate the truth. Perhaps, Harrison conceded, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes. But you've served your purpose, Michael. You've shown us the limits of our current integration protocols. Your resistance, your determination. It's valuable data. And now you too will be reintegrated, perhaps even as a trainer. Your insights could be quite useful. He nodded to the guards. Secure him. As the guards moved forward, Michael slammed his fist down on the send button. The progress bar vanished, replaced by a confirmation message. Upload complete. A triumphant, desperate laugh escaped Michael's lips. Too late, Harrison. It's out. The truth is out. Harrison's calm veneer finally cracked. His eyes narrowed, a cold, hard glint taking their place. Fool. You think a few scattered files will dismantle a global network? We are everywhere, Michael. This is just one preserve among many. Your actions will only accelerate your own reintegration. The guards were on him in an instant, strong hands seizing his arms. He struggled, but they were too powerful. They dragged him away from the console, his eyes fixed on Harrison. Jessica will know. Michael yelled, his voice hoarse. She'll expose you. Harrison merely smiled, a predatory, pitying smile. Jessica is already under observation. Her non-compliance is quite predictable. But don't worry, Michael. You'll be reunited soon enough. Both of you will find your place within the system. You will learn to appreciate the tranquility of conformity. They dragged Michael out of the server room, through the crawl space, and into the utility tunnels. He fought, he screamed, but his voice echoed uselessly in the cold, damp concrete passages. He could feel the drugs already beginning to work, the world blurring at the edges. He didn't know if his upload had truly bypassed their filters, if it would reach anyone, if it would make a difference. He didn't know what reintegration truly entailed, but the blank, serene look on David's face haunted him. He didn't know if he would ever see Jessica again, or if she too would become another perfectly compliant resident of a perfectly controlled world. As the darkness began to consume him, Michael clung to one last, desperate thought. The rules of the preserve might not be suggestions, but the truth, once unleashed, had a way of tearing down even the most meticulously constructed lies. And somewhere out there, beyond the gilded gates and the digital walls, a small spark of that truth had just been ignited. The preserve would continue, its perfect facade intact, but the cracks had begun to form, invisible to the eye, yet irrevocably there, waiting for the right moment to shatter everything.